All right, welcome to the webinar, everybody. Hope you're having a good day today. I am joined by my colleague, Mike Clayton, who you also see on your screen here. Mike's been with Computrols pushing 20 years now. He is the director of strategic partnerships, but Mike served in a number of roles throughout the years for Computrols. He's worked out in the field as a project manager. He helps me on the sales and marketing side. He works directly with our R&D team. And Mike is coming to you from his house today because our headquarters in New Orleans is, of course, shut down due to, I believe it's Hurricane Zeta now coming through. Mike, how are things looking over there?
Not bad, Scott. Thank you for asking. Kind of usual procedure around here, get all the lawn ornaments and everything tucked away and make sure you have some adult beverages in the fridge and, just get ready to hang it out. So looks like we should be in good shape here tomorrow. Should be out of here pretty quick.
Good. Glad to hear it. Things in Denver are cold, so that's where I'm coming from today. We've got quite a bit of snow on the ground from a couple of days ago, but hopefully it's all going to be melting off today. But what we're going to be talking to you all about today is obviously getting a controls division started, particularly as a mechanical contractor. But I think that this can apply to a lot of different facets of starting a controls division, whether you're a mechanical contractor or not. And this is something that Mike and I work on regularly. So as I mentioned, Mike is our manager of strategic partnerships, and he is working with our distribution partner network on a daily basis. So a lot of people who come in and add controls for the first time don't really realize what they're getting into and what they need to do to be successful. It seems like a really easy jump from, hey, I'm already putting together these systems. It'd be easy enough for me to go and control them. But in reality, there are some challenges along the way that you may not be aware of. So that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. But before I get started, I wanted to briefly introduce Computrols to everyone as we are going to be bringing you the webinar today. So Computrols is celebrating our 37th year in business this month. We started off as a service company in 1983, servicing third-party building automation systems. And in the late 80s, our founder really got fed up with a lot of the problems that he saw in the industry, such as planned obsolescence, complicated software, limiting customers to really what they were even able to do within these building automation systems at this time. So he hired on a software developer, and in 1989, we came out with the first version of Computrols building automation software and began integrating with those third-party systems. Now, pretty soon after that, our founder, Roy Lynch, got frustrated with being dependent on those manufacturers for controls, as they were constantly telling him and his customers, hey, you need to upgrade to our latest and greatest technology here. So at that point in the early 90s, Roy began manufacturing Computrols' first line of DDC controllers. And since that time, we've always manufactured our product in the US, and we've always provided the industry's only lifetime warranty. Now, as time's gone on, our product offerings expanded into lighting control, access control, and fire alarm systems as well. And then we also offer things like tenant overtime system and other metering-based services as well. So Computrols, from the very beginning, was all about empowering the end user, and that is something that we're still very much in line with today. We ultimately want to give our users a system they can manage on their own. So, one of the things that we do to support that is we give them a software package that has no limitations. Of course, there are limitations you can put on it, but we are not going to limit our customers. We're going to give them the power. And this is something, too, as we're looking for potential partners for our product, we want to find people with this same idea of, hey, I want to give my customers the power. And at the end of the day, if they need me, I'm here for them. But I'm not here to hold them hostage, and I don't want them to be using me and my system because they're stuck with me. Computrols also, like I said, provides a lifetime warranty product. We have free remote tech support, along with a number of unique integration solutions. And that's really maybe what we're best known for, is our ability to integrate to legacy third-party systems that other manufacturers are saying, hey, you need to upgrade this, or this is obsolete. We're able to natively communicate to a lot of those systems to where you can really extend the life of those quote-unquote obsolete controllers. And finally, we go to market a couple different ways. Computrols has branch offices in New Orleans, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Southern California, and Washington, D.C. But we also support many sites remotely because we give our customers the power to really operate their system autonomously. What you'll find is we have little pockets of customers in different parts of the country where we don't necessarily have a branch office or a distribution partner, but they're able to operate that system themselves. So obviously the branch offices is how we go to market primarily, and then we also have a service and distribution partner network throughout the country. And these are individuals who are typically mechanical contractors or controls contractors who go and resell our products. So I'm going to wrap up the Computrols piece here, but if becoming a Computrols distribution partner does sound interesting to you, we'll have some contact information for you at the end of this presentation for you to go and get in touch with us after the fact. So what we're talking about today, our agenda, is going to cover, why even bother offering HVAC controls in the first place. It is something that you have to invest in. It is something you have to spend time with. So why is it worth it? How do you get started with this? Because you're coming from, although a very similar business, it's also very different in a number of ways. And then Mike's going to talk to you about finding the right partner. This is an extremely important piece of the puzzle. And I find that with a lot of the people that we speak with on a regular basis, they don't always know the questions to ask, and they don't always know what to look for. So we're going to talk about that. And then Mike's going to discuss with you potential roadblocks that we see. So once you decide, hey, I'm making this jump, these are some things that you can expect to potentially run into as challenges along the way. So why offer HVAC controls in the first place? We are all asked to do more with less these days, and that includes your customers and our customers. So if you can offer them a turnkey solution, if you can offer them, having to deal with one less vendor, one less billing process, and hopefully one less headache, it's going to be something that is really appealing to a lot of customers out there. It also allows you to be the owner of that HVAC system. So you don't have to worry about, is the controls vendor going to show up on time? Are they going to give you the whole story? There's not going to be the finger pointing that you have to deal with when you have yet another subcontractor that you're working with there. Also, when you look at the margins of mechanical HVAC system type contracting versus controls contracting, the margins are also really appealing. I read in an article probably about a year ago now, an HVAC controls or HVAC contractor was asked, what their margins looked like for, after taxes. And they replied, 1% is about normal, 2 to 10% is above average, 11 to 15% is considered successful, and then 16+% is life-changing and absolutely rock star status. Now, on the other end of the spectrum here, you have controls. And although I couldn't find really strong data points for controls margins, a lot of experts were between, some saying between 10 to 60% were average margins with controls. Now, this is going to vary based on what kind of controls work you're doing. So are you doing a lot of plan and spec? Is it low bid? Is it new construction? Or is it negotiated retrofit type work? So based on the type of work you're doing with controls, your margins are going to change. But overall, what you'll find is with controls that you do have better margins overall as compared to the mechanical work. And finally, if you're not doing this, your competition is. Just before I got on the call here, I did a quick Google search for mechanical contractors in Denver. Of those first 10 results on Google, 8 of those contractors also offer controls. So customers are looking to consolidate the number of vendors they have to deal with. And this is a very appealing way to get your foot in the door one way or another. And I think that's something that Mike will talk about a little bit is, look, if you've already got your foot in the door with your mechanical business, maybe that's something you can grow into controls or vice versa. So when you get started in this process, the first thing you want to do is figure out, is this the right move? Is this something that I want to get into? And really the people you want to start with asking, about this, potentially offering this service is your existing customer base. Get an idea for, where they are with their controls company. Talk to your service techs, talk to your salespeople. They can probably tell you, oh yeah, customer ABC, they've been dealing with this manufacturer and they're really dissatisfied because X, Y, and Z. And what you learn there is not only, okay, there's a need, but also these are the pain points that these individuals are dealing with. So that'll help you when you go to find a partner. You want to make sure that that partner is going to be able to remedy those pain points. So really make sure that there's an interest level there first. If you're already kind of using subcontractors and you do a lot of new construction, I think the approach is pretty similar. You're not as focused on the customer, but that business is out there to be had. And then figuring out, where do you fit into the big scheme of things when it comes to controls? So, are you currently doing new construction? Are you servicing existing buildings? Are you doing plan and spec work, or are you doing negotiated work? These are all things that you'll want to consider when going to look for a partner to provide controls. Mike's going to get into this a little bit more, but based on where you fit into the mechanical side of things is probably going to dictate a little bit as to where you're going to fit in on the control side of things as well. And then finally, I cannot stress the importance of this enough. It's dedicating the resources to making this a success. Mike and I have seen a number of different approaches, but one of the things that we found to be consistent in those that are successful is you have at least one person within your organization who is the champion for controls. Typically, this is a technician that has overarching knowledge about how these systems work. They can educate others. They are the go-to point of contact for all things controls, whether it's sales, whether it's the person engineering proposals, or if it's a technician, a service tech that you're trying to train up on controls. You've got to have at least one person within your organization who is that expert who you can go to at any given time. And ultimately, you're going to have to dedicate time of your salespeople, for example, on selling this new product. So you're going to have to give them training on, okay, this is the pitch. This is how it's different from what we're currently doing. This is how it fits into what we're currently doing. And then you also have to make it attractive for them to sell. We talked about the margins earlier. Margins on controls tend to be higher than that of the mechanical work. Well, this is something that you can motivate. This is something you can use to motivate your salespeople. So make it attractive for them to sell by maybe increasing their percent of commission on those types of jobs. Also, you're going to have to train your team that does proposals. If they're used to doing mechanical proposals, controls are going to be a little bit different. So getting your team up to speed on when they go and do a site walk, what are they looking for in that building? What are they looking for that proposal team to ultimately go and engineer a job? So all these things are really important. And Mike will talk about how, when you go to select a partner, some partners supply some of these kinds of resources and some don't. But that's something that you'll want to figure out. So with all that said, Mike, give it to you to talk about finding the right partner.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. So as Scott mentioned, once you've decided to make that commitment to join the ranks of offering controls, you're obviously going to start the process of selecting what line you want to represent. When it comes to finding that right partner, there's several questions you want to ask of your relationship with that partner. And the first one that's probably most important is what does it take to get my team up to speed with that product? What's the learning curve? Do I have to, take many of my guys off the street, send them to a far off city for months and months to get certified or trained up on a product line? Or can we control most of that in-house? Is it intuitive enough to kind of take the bull by the horns and self-teach and use the resources provided to you by the manufacturer to get your team up to speed? Next one is open. How open is your system? It's kind of an overused term, but basically what you want to understand is does that system support the wide variety of protocols and product lines that are out there? You don't want to find yourself with a narrow list of supported protocols, because it really hems you in with being able to offer a customer or owner a wide suite of services down the road. If we select equipment, we want to be able to provide it with communication options that tie into the system that you hopefully just recommended to that owner or perhaps have installed for them. Next one is the ability to integrate with third-party controllers. This kind of goes hand in hand with the openness. Is what is your ability to talk to existing product in the building? It's one thing to go in and tell the owner, sure, I need to replace everything, and that number is going to have a lot of zeros after it. But being able to offer degrees of integration and to support, the many legacy hardware protocols and controllers that may be in the building, that'll be key to your long-term success. Another one is product availability and lead times. How quickly can you get that project executed? You work very hard to sell. You work very hard to get the owner to say yes and sign off on that proposal. And then, it's a shame when you lose all that momentum because you're waiting for weeks, if not months, to get product received in so you can complete the project. So, find out what those actual lead times are, availability. And furthermore, what does that manufacturer do in terms of turnover? How often are they end-of-lifing products and no longer selling them, no longer servicing, no longer making them available? And what does that look like in terms of product architecture for that manufacturer? Also with that, product warranties and what do they cover? We mentioned, it's one thing to have a warranty on a product, but if they outright just don't support it anymore, don't make it available, what does that do to you and your existing customer base? Same thing with software upgrades. It's great and dandy to have a warranty on a product, but if it's no longer supported by the manufacturer and you can no longer use it with future versions of software, you kind of painted yourself in a corner. Also find out exclusions and such. Do they honor the warranty or, to anyone or only to the original installer, or, to certified technicians can only, perform product replacements. Software needed to replace a control. If you do order a replacement, can you go in and replace it? Do you need special tools and software needed to perform that replacement? Another question, how frequently should I be expected to upgrade? There's some trends in the industry to kind of force upgrades upon people. And that's really something you don't want to find yourself with, is, going to your customer and telling them, yeah, I know I just sold you that software last year, but you know what, I'm forced to upgrade you now because we can't service that anymore. So find out the upgrade policies. A, are you forced to do it periodically? And B, what's the cost? What's my options for upgrading? Is it something required, or can I elect to do it on my own schedule or the owner's wishes? Ongoing costs is another one. Again, what does this look like in terms of, are there, software maintenance fees? This is kind of a nasty trend of, let's take a software cost, divide it up, and then charge you that amount over 5 years under the label of software maintenance. Is the software sold as a subscription where you don't actually own it, but you're effectively leasing it and have to pay every so often to renew it? Those are important questions. A, to determine the total cost of ownership of that product and what it's going to look like over the life of the product. Bidding on the same projects. may come as a surprise to some of you, but there's some manufacturers out there of building automation system controllers that will they'll sell you, the installer, a product line, and then carry a similar line at a lower price point and actively compete against you on cherry-pick projects in your market. So you want to get that product manufacturer to define what the roles look like. How does it look? Can they come compete against you on your same projects, or are you protected? So see what their policies are on that, and what that looks like in writing if you can. Speaking of that, how do territories work? When you select that product, how do they divvy up the country? Do they give you this, line on that map, and you're prohibited from selling in another zip code or area code, or what's their policies on that? Or is it perhaps more organic? A lot of times opportunities these days will pull you across different geographical areas. Are you free to pursue those, or are you limited by the manufacturer? What is your buying amount and annual quota? Quite simply, what does it take you to get started? What are the franchise fees or startup fees or those sort of costs associated with getting off the ground? And what does it include? Are you simply paying for the right to buy product from that manufacturer, or are you actually getting hardware and goods and services for that startup cost? And then on the tail end, what is your annual quota? Are you committing to an open PO for a certain amount? If you fail to reach that amount, are you unable to buy product going forward? Find out what those policies are in place by that manufacturer. Next one is references. Find out if that manufacturer, what's their success story with other people like yourself who have, picked up their product line and started repping it. Have they had good success? See if you can get their contact information and reach out to them directly. A lot of times you can kind of find out the hidden nuances and ins and outs of being a rep for a product, and get the other side of the coin, if you will, before you make that commitment.
Mike, we had a question come in, and it kind of pairs well with the discussion that you were just having about the buy-in amount and annual quota. The question was, what do you expect to be the initial cost to start this new division? And I didn't know if you had any insight as to any kind of average costs for, whether it be franchise fees, whether it be, whatever that buy-in amount is, but wanted to pose that question to you. Based on my experience in the industry, that can vary greatly. I would think it's reasonable for, 10 to 20,000 to be a reasonable expectation. But not, more important is, what are you actually getting for that investment? There's a big difference between writing a check to someone just to be able to write more checks for them down the road, and you're simply paying for the privilege of being able to purchase that product, as compared to, are you actually getting products and hardware and training and resources needed to help you with your initial steps of onboarding with that partner? So, I would say that the dollar amount is close there, but I think the big question you want to ask is, what exactly am I getting for that investment? Yeah, and I think that's the tip of the iceberg too. I think that we bring up a lot of points here of what kind of training do I get? Is that what training is included? What training is not included? When you're talking about hiring somebody on, that salary is a cost. When you're talking about sitting your sales team down and training them for 3 hours in a given day, that's 3 hours that you're paying them for, that they're not out there actively selling. So there are some other costs that go into it, but I think that kind of gives you a quick answer to what you might expect in terms of cost and buying in.
So we've talked about why you should get started and repping your own control line. We've talked about what you should look for when you're evaluating potential lines. Let's talk about some potential roadblocks, things that can kind of derail this effort initially. And one that we touched on earlier in the presentation is underinvesting. It's one thing to say you want to start a controls, division or effort within your company, but, committing resources to it. We've seen many people that look, I've got a guy, he's a good mechanic, he's pretty good on the computer, I'm going to make him my controls guy, he's going to handle sales and engineering and everything. it's really an underinvestment at that point. It's hard for that one person to wear all of those hats effectively. So, it's hiring people. I'm not telling you anything new. That's probably one of our biggest challenges. But it's something you really want to focus on, is getting the right people in and making that investment. Hire on the tech savvy guy that you think could be your programmer. Hire on that salesman that can help feed the pipeline and make sure that you have projects to bid on. Oh, excuse me, to compete on. Speaking of bid, know your target customers. Understanding, what are you suited for? Is the product line you're representing, a commodity, cheap, kind of canned application? Then perhaps your target would be plan and spec market. If you have the ability to create custom solutions, you go the other route, you want to do integrations, then your target customer would probably be more the retrofit market and direct to owner type work. So understanding what you're built for, what your goal is, making sure your product line matches those goals. If you find yourself doing a lot of service for schools, or if you're find yourself in the plan and spec market, then select your product accordingly to match those efforts. And that goes with understanding the strengths and weaknesses of the product. Understanding what that product was built for. Typically, if it's something you can find at Grainger, then that's really more the commodity, the more the plan and spec market, where price is the big motivator. A lot of those organizations are kind of designed to make up that initial loss of revenue by giving it away on the front end in the form of ongoing service. Whereas, other products may be typically more front loaded in cost because the ongoing costs are relatively low. So understanding your market, if you're into service, understanding the goals of your existing client base, what their needs are, and making sure that product matches, and don't try to put the square peg in the round hole, so to speak.
Yeah, and along the lines of this entire webinar, I think one of the potential roadblocks people run into is they get to the point where, okay, we're doing it, and then they ask their partner, hey, can you help me with this? And the answer is no. And so it's really a matter of asking all of the right questions on the front end so there are no surprises. And we say, no surprises. There are always going to be some surprises, but a lot of what we're talking about here today is really built with the idea of you're mitigating your risk because you know what the answers to these questions are.
Sure. And Scott, you bring up a very good point. When it comes to the resources, when you ask your vendor to kind of get outside of their box, what is their willingness to work with you on that? Meaning, are they simply happy to take your order and put some parts in a box and send it to you along with a bill? But what other gaps may you have in your efforts? Do they have the ability to put programmers on your site or trainers on your site or help you with sales and marketing efforts? There's a myriad of resources that can be made available to you or not, depending on the vendor that you choose. So just another consideration.
And I just wanted to point everybody in this direction here. So I'll be sending this ebook to you all after we're off the webinar today. But this is a really great resource. It covers really everything that we talked about here today. And it's a nice little guide for you. So if you really want to, get into this a little bit deeper, of course, we're happy to help you. You'll have Mike and I's contact information here in just a moment. But really, this ebook is a great place to start. You'll have the recording of this webinar. And then, do continue to use us as a resource here. But with that said, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Mike, will you check your chat? I know that some of the chats only come through privately. So, all right. So it looks like I have another question here. It says, since we're talking about roadblocks, having been in the industry for years, I've seen this business model before and have known mechanical contractors who have tried this and failed primarily due to the lack of correct skill sets from their employees. The assumption is that all you need to do is hook up a few wires. Have you given any consideration in providing the engineering deliverables and services to the contractors for a fee, naturally, to assist with efficient projects?
Sure. So that's a good point. Again, the aim of this webinar was to guide you in the decision. It was trying to be vendor agnostic. As it comes to Computrols, we certainly do offer those resources, as you mentioned, for a fee basis. Everything from drawings to O&M manuals or whatever those technical requirements are. You do bring up a good point that a lot of people think it's just throw a couple wires at something and it'll work. Typically our BMS technician these days is much more of a technician in terms of IT requirements and those sort of things. The general consensus and opinion, I would say, if I'm going to broadly paint, our mechanical contractors, is that they can teach the mechanical side. You can teach them the skills needed to drive a building properly. And there's typically often a big knowledge base in the company of how to actually control it. But the programming language, the networking side, hooking controllers up to a network, that's typically where the knowledge gap lies. And so we often recommend, if you're starting off, try to hire someone on the more technical side with the hopes that you can teach them the mechanical side. And then, if you don't have those resources, like you mentioned, in-house for engineering, drawing, things like that, then, see if your partner that you're selecting is willing to offer those to you on a fee basis.
It looks like we don't have any questions at this point, so we're going to sign off. But if you do have any questions, or if you're interested in potentially pursuing a distribution partner relationship with Computrols, we are obviously happy to have that conversation with you and give you all the details about how we do these things. And this is all information we try to share with our potential partners, because we want to make sure it's a fit on both sides. And if you do speak to a manufacturer who doesn't ask a whole lot of questions, just says, hey, it's X number of dollars to get signed up, and they're happy to just take your money without a whole lot of conversation, there's a red flag there. And probably keep that in mind when you are seeking out a partner potentially for this kind of work. So anything else to add, Mike?
No, sir. Hit it on the head. Thank you, Scott.
All right. Well, thank you all for attending the webinar today, and we'll be back in touch shortly.